Welcome. This is Logan Cockrum with Action Coach Bluegrass in Southern Indiana, and you're listening to the Success Through Action podcast, where we're talking to successful business owners to hear their stories and how they took action to grow their businesses. Welcome to the Success Through Action podcast. We're here today with Katie Daniel of Ambition Fitness. We're happy to have you on this edition. Before we get to the juicy bits on what your business is and does, just fill us in a little bit on who you are.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to be here. So thank you for having me. My name is Katie. I own a company named Ambition Fitness, and we are about 4.5 years old now. And basically a few years ago, I was like, hey, I kind of wanted to quit my corporate 8 to 5 and go on this entrepreneurship venture. And 4.5 years later, here we are. And our business specializes in strength training for women. So we're a female forward fitness studio. We specialize in weights because the weight section can be so intimidating for women, and usually it's masculine. There's kind of this perceived expectation it's going to be dusty and dirty, and it's not female friendly. So we basically made our own weight section just for the ladies.
So you said that you decided to quit your corporate gig and pursue this full time. Were you in fitness prior to this?
Okay, so great question. I was not raised an athlete. I didn't have any real background in fitness. And the whole reason that I'm so passionate about Ambition is that strength training and weights is really the only thing that I found in my mid-20s that had given me body confidence and really was a form of exercise that I enjoyed. And I think that I come from the generation that was told to do a bunch of cardio and be as small as you can and don't eat food. And when you do, it's going to be lettuce and vegetables. And that doesn't work for anybody, men or women. So when I found weights, it was such a game changer for me, and it changed my confidence, my physique, and really just it rippled into every aspect of my life to where I was like, wow, I've never felt this empowered, and I've never felt this good about myself and really feeling capable with this newfound confidence. And the whole point of Ambition is to make women feel good. And I was like, women need to experience what this feeling is. And at the time when I come from a sales background in medical sales, and at the time I was looking at group fitness, and F45 has really come into the US market probably within the past I'd say 2 years or so. But before that, F45 was not here, and that was probably the main group fitness that had catered to strength training in general. And other than that, there was CrossFit. And I have nothing against CrossFit. It's just a lot of times it doesn't appeal to my audience and to a lot of women. It can be intimidating, and there's a lot of pressure to go so heavy, and Olympic lifts are so advanced that there was just not a solution on the market that I had found that I would want to be a part of, and that I felt like women would want to do as well. So that's how Ambition really came to be.
What makes it different in terms of the actual exercise protocol than an F45 or a CrossFit?
Okay, very good question. And this is what I really, really like about Ambition. And I was also a little bit nervous about this, if women would like this as well. So I know that we had talked previously, you come from a strength training athletic background, and the whole thing with weights is progressive overload and repetition and programming that's structured in a way that you are repeating the exercises to a point where, one, you're confident in the movement and the motion pattern. And then also, two, once it starts to feel easy, then you want to start to add a little bit of weight to the same movement. And in the fitness industry, across the board, and I still do feel like this is a message that goes out, it's, hey, do something different every day so you don't get bored. And it's all about switching it up. And with weights, fundamentally, that's everything that you shouldn't be doing. So with Ambition, we do monthly programming. So our classes are basically a different muscle split. So we've got lower, upper, full body. And we do have rhythm riding. So we have spin bikes as our choice of cardio. But primarily, we're still strength training. So our classes will be the same programming throughout the entire month. So lower on Mondays, we're doing the same workout every Monday. Same with Tuesday is upper, and yada yada throughout the week. So I think that fundamentally with our programming, that's very different than a lot of other studios. And like I said earlier, I wasn't sure if women would enjoy that or not because we've been told over and over and over again to switch it up. And we have found we had such a positive response to our clients who really, really enjoy that. And it's a way that you can truly track your progress and feel empowered. And it's something very tangible that you can look at, okay, like at the beginning of the month or at the beginning of this program, this is what I was lifting, this is how I felt. And then by the end of the month, it's measurable. Another thing that I think that makes us very different as well is that we have squat racks in our studio. And in the traditional weight section, like the squat rack is really intimidating. And like women walk in, especially if they've never been under a barbell, they're like, I can't do that. That looks scary. And it was really important for my business concept and really just for the true value. We want our workouts to have impact and we want it to be high level training and programming. And in my personal opinion, you really can't do that without compound lifting and without barbell work. So I would say that also makes us very unique.
An interesting thing is this pathway from corporate to entrepreneur. It's a fairly commonly traversed journey. How did you deal with the risks involved of that? Are you someone that is not really risk averse, or how did you deal with that?
I love this question because I remember it was years ago, I had heard a quote that everybody thinks that entrepreneurs are risk takers. And inherently, yes, that's not untrue, but they say that a good entrepreneur is actually very risk aversive. And so they look at every aspect of I like to think of business as a chessboard. You're playing chess. And so every single movement and play that you do, you have to be thinking, on a lateral movement, how it's going to impact the here and now. And then you also have to be thinking 6 to 9 to 12 months out. So if you can play the chessboard with your most informed decision and you feel confident in how you make that play, I think that's the best position and the most risk aversive thing that you can do. I had a great career in medical sales, worked with great companies, and financially, it's what allowed me to actually, launch Ambition. So only good things to say about that career path. I just got burnt out and I was just ready for something new. And this was just something that I was so passionate about that I thought about it for 2 years and I would dream about it in my sleep at night. And finally, I was like, I'm so sick and tired of like saying I'm going to do this and thinking about it. So really, I think that my path with entrepreneurship and navigating through risk is the best way that I can explain it is that I just follow a breadcrumb trail. And I think that launching a business is all about asking questions and then you get the answers and then you make the best informed decision from there. So for example, one of my best friends who really helped introduce me to strength training was the owner of an Anytime Fitness here locally. And so this is how I got into weights. And I was doing it for a few years. And with Anytime Fitness being a franchise and, him having his own business, one day, and I had told him about my business model. And finally, I was like, okay, like I'm really ready to talk about how, if I have this concept, how do I make this something tangible? And where do I even begin with this? I was like, I'm meeting you at your office on this Friday. We're having this conversation. What do you think? And so we had that meeting and he was like, hey, the first thing that you need to do is you need to look into an SBA loan. And I was like, what's the SBA? Which is such a ridiculous thing that I didn't even know about. The SBA loan is what funded my entire business. And so they've just been so supportive and great. But it's just like, okay, like if you have a question, you ask it. And then once you get that answer, then you just ask the next question and it just brings you step by step. And so I was like, all right, what's the SBA? And then I Googled it. And the very next day on that Saturday, they had a business plan writing boot camp. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get into that boot camp. And I remember it was like $150. And I called my husband and I was like, hey, I'm going to spend $150 and I'm going to this boot camp tomorrow. And he was like, okay, cool. Like, go for it. And that's just really how it all started. And I think it's all about starting those conversations and asking people that have more experience than you, hey, what's my next step? And from there, you just start to gather information and step by step, it starts to unfold.
How often did you second guess yourself?
A lot. It's funny. I think that no one can prepare you for what business ownership feels like. And there were so many people that were like, hey, it's going to be really hard. And I was like, yeah. I can do hard. I work well under pressure. And people could have said that a million more times in a million different ways, and I still wouldn't have understood until you're actually in it. And there was quite a few moments to, one, being an entrepreneur will bring you to your knees. Like all of a sudden you are just in a situation, especially from a startup perspective too. And I think that's really important to talk about. Franchisees have an amazing advantage of, here's a business in a box that is a proven method, a proven concept. It's profitable. This is how you make money. This is how you sell. This is how you market. It's such an amazing support system. It's a little bit different from an entrepreneur because there is no blueprint and you are building the blueprint as you go. Yes, you can have mentors, but there's no one up in the company that you can ask, hey, how do we solve this problem? What do we do? It's all you, and it's constant problem solving. And while I enjoy that, the first 2 years of being an entrepreneur is the most challenging thing that I think that anybody could ever do. And going back to your question, I think that it's an emotional roller coaster. Sometimes you're like, yes, it's working. We're doing it. It's rolling out. And then other times you're like, what have I done? Like, have I messed up my whole life? I'm in the trenches. I'm in this. So I think it's just a little bit of like faith in the unknown that it's going to work out. And going back to that chessboard, it's like, okay, like when you're in the trenches and you have that self-doubt, it's only up to you to get yourself out of that trench. So what are you going to do about it? It's constant discipline. And there's a lot of self-pep talks when you're going through those moments of doubt.
Looking back in hindsight, what would you have done differently if you started your business right now?
Fun fact for someone that started a boutique fitness studio, I had never stepped foot in a boutique fitness studio other than my own until a year after I started Ambition. So I do think that gave me a very unbiased perspective of being able to launch my business in a very organic and personal way of like, hey, this is who we are without any external influence. However, I started my business with like a Facebook event, and I really knew nothing about how to market, how to get our name out there. And I think that if I really was able to even get a glimpse of proven success models and proven strategies of how to get my brand out there and how to sell and how to market and how to package our prices, maybe we would have had a little bit of a better or faster launch. Luckily, it all still worked out, which, is thank you. But it probably would have been a little bit more prepared in hindsight if I had looked into what the titans and what the successful businesses in my industry were already doing. So that probably would have been good.
So what's next for Ambition Fitness? What are your goals with it?
Great question. So when I started Ambition, my husband was the first person that I had to really talk into this idea. I was like, hey, so I want to quit my 6-figure job and start a business. How do I convince you this is a good idea for our family? And he was so supportive and so receptive, which is great. But I told him, I was like, Dan, like I'm burnt out in my job and in my career. I had saved quite a bit from medical sales, and I was like, well, we could either invest this in a new house and put this into our life and our family, or I've been thinking about this for 2 years and man, like it would be cool to do. And I don't want to get to where I'm 50 years old and look back and be like, man, like, girl, you should have tried that. That would keep me up at night. So when I was discussing this with him, I was like, weights have made such an impact on my life as a female that even if it was just one location and it made a difference in women's life, that would be the most fulfilling, amazing thing. And I'm like, what if it just broke even? Of course you want to make money off of it, but like, I was just so passionate about empowering women through this and really bringing this to women's daily life and their experience and having such a long-term impact on their confidence and inherently how you feel as a person. And I tell men all the time, I'm like, men have been conditioned from day one, be strong, lift weights, being strong is a great feeling. And having discovered that feeling in my mid-20s, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Women need to feel this way. So I was like, Dan, I would feel very fulfilled by doing this with one location. And I was like, but man, like, and I didn't really know anything about, it was above my pay grade at the time to know how to scale a company, right? I'm just figuring out how to launch one idea in one location. But I was like, man, Dan, like, what if not only this location and this business made women feel confident and empowered on a physical and emotional, mental level, I was like, but what if it does well? And it's always like but what if it does well? And what if you expand it? And then it goes from empowering women on a physical and emotional and mental level, but also what if we can financially empower women? And what if they could quit their jobs? And if they could have passive income for their family, especially like mothers and who have children. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I get goosebumps talking about it every time. That would really be something. So like I said, Ambition's about 4.5 years old. And we had looked into developing into a franchise right before COVID launched. And obviously COVID pumped the brakes on that. And last year I had the opportunity to meet some who are now my business partners. And they have extensive experience in the boutique fitness industry of really scaling some big names already. And they were super excited about this concept and how the business has performed the past few years. And so we have actually partnered with the franchise department, and we are in the process of developing the franchise model for Ambition. And so we're not there yet. It's going to take a few months, but that type of expansion path is really our goal. And it's just so exciting to see it all roll out. And also too, it's like, man, it's going to be here quick in a handful of months. And thinking about the impact that it's going to have not only on women in different markets and different regions, it's just the ripple is starting to expand, but also too, potentially talking to future business owners and really being able to bring that for women's financial opportunity and career opportunity for their families. So that's where it's all trending. And we're working on that behind the scenes right now.
That sounds very exciting. And one of the things that I've heard kind of in this first 20 minutes from you is it sounds like there are definitely a lot of people along the way that have helped you and are continuing to help you. And you've mentioned mentorship. So a question for you is, who has been your greatest mentor or coach and why?
If I had to pick one, it would be my team at Ambition. You know, boutique fitness in general as an industry is very community based. And from both a trainer perspective, working in boutique fitness, and also from a client perspective, it's very common for people in general to go try different modalities and go to different studios. And it's a really like beautiful industry in that aspect of it's very community. And there's a lot of partnership despite it all being capitalist and we're all here to make money and run our businesses, right? So the industry is very supportive. I would say our team has brought so much value to helping scale and build daily strategy operations because they've seen proven success models and strategies and hey, like we could implement this here, like still have a business that is very niche, has our own path that's very unlike other companies, but start to implement different ideas and things that could get us to the next level. So I've learned so much from my team who work in other businesses, who attend other businesses and our clients and customers with other studios. So that has been very helpful. I believe that a working environment, especially from a leadership perspective, it is a two-way relationship. Not only do you have to take care of your employees, but you have to work together, not only like me and my employees, but I encourage my employees to work together as a team, even without me there. Because I'm like, all right, like it takes a village, people. So I trust my village and really they're second to none. And I think that something else I would have to think of would be a handful of other studio owners here locally in Louisville. So that has been a very supportive network as well, which has been a blessing. And I can't say is very common with a lot of other industries, which I think is special for us.
Is mentorship something that you take upon yourself to do since you've benefited from it?
Yes. You know, the whole going back to what I said earlier about as an entrepreneur, you don't have a blueprint. You can ask people questions, but at the end of the day, it's your concept, it's your decisions, it's your execution, it's your failure, and it's also your success. So you can ask people as many questions as you want, but at the end of the day, it is your responsibility, your outcome, whether it's positive or negative of your decisions. And there were so many times with Ambition that I didn't know the answer. And I was so overwhelmed that, man, like if I had someone to like ask questions to, maybe it would have been, it's a whole different ballgame. So I feel very, very passionate about with our team to be like, hey, one, it is my job to support you. How can I help you? Are you feeling overwhelmed? what is lacking? What do you need? What are the resources and conversations that we can provide to make you feel good and empowered in your job? But also, too, I feel very passionate about, man, like I didn't have people to ask questions to, at least within my own business. So anytime that you have questions, I want to teach you different ways of thinking, why these decisions are made, and a higher level kind of strategy in that aspect. And what's really great about group fitness, too, is that another level of empowering women is that not only with our expansion is our goal to, all the levels of empowerment that we already discussed, but even working at a studio and becoming a general manager or a lead trainer or getting your foot into the fitness industry, there's a lot of young women in their mid and early 20s that are really at the beginning of their career path, to where it's such an amazing time and age to be able to teach women and really be a professional mentor. Because when I was in the corporate world, they were great managers, but I mean, like the C-suite and general like mid-management, a lot of it was men. And it's really nice to have a female resource as a woman that you can go to and really have just like that inherent trust and understanding of how to help women get to another level in their career, or really with day-to-day business strategy and operations. So I feel very passionate about that.
Yeah, I think great leaders are great mentors. And if you are at some point thinking of franchising your model, all great franchises have been created by great mentors, because that's essentially what you're doing with your franchisees, is you're mentoring them on your model and your culture. And in order for the franchise to have success, your franchisees have to have success. I mean, no one's going to invest,
Two-way relationship.
No.
One party does not win if the other does not. It's that win-win relationship. And I'm so glad that you brought that up too, because what I'm so excited about with the Ambitions expansion is that there are a lot of companies that expand too quickly. And honestly, if we had started to go through the franchise process and completed the process right before COVID, and if COVID hadn't stopped us in our tracks and hit the pause button, it would have been too soon for us too. So that was a great blessing in disguise. But there's so many businesses that start to expand without having their business model completely filled out, and without having proven profitability, and without having even like daily operations and standards and process with business. It's such an integrative web that everything impacts each other. And so too, you have to have the right people in the right place and the right positions. And that will make or break your business. So when we go on this expansion process, I'm so excited that after 4.5 years of doing this, we've been able to check all of those boxes. And so when we do start the selling process, and we're not there yet, but when we do get there, it's going to be so amazing on that mentorship level to be like, hey, if you would like to have an Ambition studio, I can help you down to a granular detail find success, because we know exactly how to do it. And fitness is very much the business of people. And it took me, even though I had a successful career in sales, I had never been a manager before. I'd never managed a team. And that was probably a long learning curve for me. And now we have about 20 people on our team here at the Louisville location. And I'm very excited to be able to help future owners and managers effectively make their team feel good and make them feel empowered, so their business runs well and everybody works together, like rolling the ball forward together. So that was something that I wish that I had had a mentor for, and I'm very excited that we'll be able to provide that for future franchisees.
Yeah, this is the Katie Daniel edition, so I don't want to talk too much about a personal experience, but you might get a kick out of it because we were in the same industry. I was really good at selling personal training, and I was so at personal training, but I became the manager of a PT studio that had no PT, right? So it's kind of interesting. But anyway, I sold like 12 grand worth of monthly revenue in 2 months, and I didn't have the staff, right? So I was trying to manage it, and then I hired some staff on. But it turns out, I tell people this all the time, I wasn't good at anything besides sales. So I wasn't good at management. I wasn't good at time management. I wasn't good at anything besides sales. So it really crumbled. So it went back down to about 6 grand, which was what I could actually maintain. And then it took me about 6 months to get back to that rate. And in that time, talk about your ego just getting bruised. Because for like 2 months there, I was just blaming everyone else because I'm the hotshot that sold so much personal training. But that goes back to your point too, that you can't grow too fast, because if you grow too fast and you don't have the infrastructure in place, I mean, you're just good at sales. I mean, you have to have that infrastructure. So that's also something that you get from the franchise model, is because then you have somebody come in and tell you, listen, you're growing a little too fast here. Do you have everything in place?
Yes. And if we had completed that process in 2020, the answer would have been no. And so I think where both me and my business partners were so excited is that we're like, the boxes are checked. And a big part of me personally deciding to move forward with this expansion process, I was like, is the Louisville location ready for me to step away from? Because for the first few years, you're so involved with the daily operations, both with your team, but also with clients as well. And like I said, we're in the business of people. So who's driving the business? Who's running it? Is the business running effectively? And are we also meeting our client needs and engaging with them? You know, kind of like you had said, you get your ego kicked quite a few times with sales and scaling and entrepreneurship. And I've had a lot of those moments as well. And I'm very excited that this team is the strongest that it's ever been. And I think when you take the ego out of business, it's like, okay, I don't need to be the best trainer. I don't need to be our client's favorite person, because if the business is dependent on me, I'll never be able to step away and then it will fail. So going back to empowering my team and making sure they're thriving and they're succeeding is really the definition of my business's success. So that two-way, really strong partnership and connection with the team that I mentioned earlier is just, it's so crucial.
You've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'd like you to dive a little deeper on it. Is what have you learned about yourself during this journey with Ambition?
Humility. You know, it's taught me, I don't know if patience is the right word for it. First of all, you start to feel when your business does well, and even when it's not doing well, and your team and your clients are there for you, there's a huge feeling of gratitude. Like, it's just so humbling, and you kind of feel supported in a way that you hadn't really felt before, because you're at your most vulnerable when you start a business. And that's a really cool and unique way to be able to bond with people. Like I said, we're in the business of people, which is just like such a beautiful business model to be in. I love it. As far as something that's a tangible thing that I learned about myself, and that I think that I have seen a lot of growth on, is, you know, say business ownership to an extent is always putting out some fires, right? And unless it is like a scalding hot call 911 fire, I've learned to react less and really have been able to objectively look at a situation and be like, if this is the situation, what's its impact? Where are we bleeding out? You know, what do we need to put a Band-Aid on? And at the end of the day, it's usually not the end of the world. So it's taught me to be less reactionary and more level-headed for sure.
That sounds like wisdom from experience.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
So, Katie, I have one last question for you. It's kind of a funny question, and you can take your time answering it. It's not funny. I don't think it's a funny question. It depends on what your answer is. It could be theoretically extremely funny, but it could also be emotional. I don't know. So, if you could have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Ooh. Sarah Blakey from Spanx. Kris Jenner. I know that the Kardashians are a very controversial family, but no one can argue their success and ambitions. And it's amazing to see what a business that they have made. Third one. I feel like I'm going to say a man here. Gender. I would really like to have dinner with another entrepreneur in the fitness industry. Her name is Christina, and she has built an incredibly successful spin studio. And she actually travels internationally to go train teams. And she has just built up her business from ground level, starting a studio like the same way that I did, and has scaled it immensely successfully through social media, Instagram, TikTok, and the marketing content that they put out. And she would be an amazing person to speak with about scaling her business on her own so successfully, and also how she works with and empowers her team and clients. So that's another person I very much admire. You know, it's easy to admire the titans, right? The people that have already achieved massive success. So when I look at peers of small business owners who has done what well, I would like to have dinner with her.
Well, Katie, I definitely appreciate you taking the time. And it was a pleasure having you on the Success Through Action podcast. And I hope you all the best with Ambition. And thanks again.
Thank you so much. And it was so nice being on. So thank you for having me.
To everyone who tuned into this episode, thanks for listening to the Success Through Action podcast. Make sure to take action, and I'll see you next time.